Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to our Zoominars. Been listening to the fabulous Commodores, our theme music, Zoom. Thank you for joining us this morning. Good to see everybody. Welcome, especially fellow parents. I know the last 5 months have been difficult on my wife and me, especially making these decisions about the children going back to school. Been quite a lot on us to try to make the best decisions for our little ones, and I'm sure you feel the same way. You know, we had our daughter and then son later in life. Don't get me wrong, I'm anticipating having an amazing last third of my life, which is what I'm counting on, although it's not guaranteed to any of us. But what I really, really care about is leaving a legacy for our children and leaving them set up to have amazing lives and, in my mind, change the world for the better. So, you know, it's not for me to decide what you care about, right? Your values are what are most important to you. But after 35 years of practicing law, I have found that typically everybody cares about something or someone. And what we believe estate planning is about is protecting that something or someone, enhancing the experience of that something or someone, and helping you to make your goals regarding whatever it is you care about a reality. Welcome. Congratulations. I hope this is the second best hour you'll spend all year, and I'll tell you about the first hour a little later. There is a chat bar down at the bottom of the screen for those of you that are new to Zoom. And I want to tell you that no question is a bad question except the unasked question. So anything you wish to ask, please type it into the chat bar. I will leave some time at the end for questions, if any, if I see any come up. And if it's a general question, I'll answer it here in the webinar. If it's very fact specific to you and your life and might involve privileged information, we can manage that on a one-to-one offline from this recording. So we're going to get used to the chat bar now so I can see that everybody knows how to use it. I'll ask each of you to answer 2 quick questions. How many of you have children 18 and under? Go to the chat bar right here and just enter it into the chat. I'll see it. Everybody else won't see it, but I'll see your responses. Just, me, yes, 2 of them, anything you want to write. Interesting, very interesting. We have slightly more with children, yeses, children under 18, than nos. So then the other side of the question is, let me know if you have children 18 and up. A yes indicates, yes, I do have children that are 18 years and older. Obviously, that's the age of majority in our state, in our country. And so anything older than 18 and older is a yes, and 18 and under, if you don't have 18 and older, put a no. That was clear as mud, wasn't it? Okay, all right, that one is 50-50. Okay, so really quick, let me tell you about Rock Solid Law. I've formed my independent practice in 1991 after beginning my practice in downtown Jacksonville with a couple of firms in 1985. I also had practiced in Virginia in 1984, which is where I went to law school. So over the years, Rock Solid Law has developed to be a firm which really does 3 things. And today we're going to talk about one of those 3 arms, and that is estate planning. That is helping families to express their values from generation to generation, taking into consideration the life of the individual and their values and what they care about for managing what they've created here during this lifetime after they're through using it. Second area is I represent entrepreneurial small business owners. That's the heartbeat of the American dream, I believe, the heartbeat of the American economy, I mean, and just love helping those people create and grow, particularly during this difficult time. And then finally, we help people with the cornerstone of the American dream, and that is home ownership. We help with closing, title, and escrow on real property, including residences, and of course, commercial properties as well. I really believe that home ownership is the cornerstone of the American dream. So we work in the heartbeat of the American economy, cornerstone of the American dream, and then our thrust in our estate planning is to strengthen the American family from generation to generation. That's a little overview of who I am and what my practice is about, but this isn't about me. It's not even about rock solid law. This is about you. We're going to focus on YOU. It's about how you wish to be treated for the rest of your life, particularly as you age. It's about writing the ultimate chapters of your life, of your heroic life story, so that you will be celebrated after you're gone. It can be about your heirs. It can be about your legacy. I have found in my practice that most of us care about something bigger than ourselves. Now, estate planning is also about deciding whether you're going to pay only the mandatory taxes or whether you choose to pay voluntary ones also. Most people I counsel with do not wish to pay taxes that are not mandatory. This is about maximizing your prosperity during your life. You know, you have to create wealth, you have to maintain wealth, and then you pass wealth on. And those are the things that we help you with. Yes, it's about how you will share your life's abundance with those you treasure, or that which you treasure. Had the opportunity to start today with one of my favorite charities, the Beach's Sea Turtle Patrol, and actually watched a leatherback hatchling crawl into the ocean before they did the count on the number of babies that had come out of that nest. Perhaps when my days are through, providing something for the Beach's Sea Turtle Patrol will be something that's important for me. I don't care what's important for you. I'm agnostic on that point. But whatever it is, we want to help you to benefit it to the maximum amount that you are able to do so, and to take advantage of the laws to help you to do so. We want you to be able to share your treasure how you want and when you want, all at the least expense possible. How you want and when you want. There are ways that you can control those decisions past your life here on earth. And we're here to help you do this. All at the least expense possible. We're trying to do everything we can to keep your assets with you during your lifetime and with your family or whomever you choose after you're gone. So, as I said, we're going to help you tell your story based on your values. First off, estate planning is about taking care of yourself. Did you know that? This is how you assure that you are taken care of in the manner you wish to be taken care of as you age. So let me tell you a little story. Everybody's heard of Groucho Marx. Imagine Groucho Marx. Close your eyes, think of Groucho Marx. Oh, the funny guy with the glasses and the cigar and cracking jokes. And that funny guy was a Hollywood movie star, beloved by millions and rewarded richly for it. He was a very, very wealthy old man. Unfortunately, or fortunately, he outlived the other Marx brothers, but he also outlived his ability to take care of himself. And despite all of his riches, Groucho Marx never entered into simple estate planning. Therefore, when Groucho was no longer able to take care of himself, somebody else had to do it. Now, that person had to be chosen because Groucho hadn't designated it for himself. You see, if you say who you want to take care of you, the law protects that. If you don't say, the law has to determine who is the person with your best interest in mind. So there was a big lawsuit. It's called a guardianship suit. We call it a living probate because poor Groucho Marx had to sit there in that courtroom while people fought over him. Were they really fighting for the right to take care of Groucho? Most people think they were really fighting for the right to have access to his fortune and to determine how it was going to be spent. There's a picture of Groucho Marx, the funny guy of his generation, the Hollywood movie star, sitting in a wheelchair in that courtroom, blanket over his lap, and a tear trickling out of the old man's eye. He'd chosen that for himself by choosing not to act. I would encourage each of you to not choose that for yourself. Guess what else, parents? We're talking about protecting our children. As part of the package, we will provide you a pre-need guardianship. So if there comes a time while your children are minors that they're not able to take care of themselves, you will have chosen who will do that. You know, the sad conclusion, the even sadder conclusion to the Groucho Marx story is that shortly after the guardianship occurred, he died. So they had to probate his estate all over again because he hadn't even done a will. So that fight that was over the control of him got to happen twice. And do you know who paid for it? Both times? Groucho Marx. All of that came out of his estate. He could have avoided all of that by simple estate planning. And I want to urge you guys to do it as well. The celebrity cases are legion who failed to plan properly. You've heard of them recently. Prince. 17 people claiming to be his kid. Just couldn't be bothered to fill out a few simple documents. All those advisors, and nobody got him to do what he needed to do. I'm here to try to get you to do what you need to do. Don't choose what Groucho chose. Folks, there are so-called reputable firms that are intentionally putting their clients through probate. Probate is an expensive process. It has three negatives. It costs a lot of money, it takes a lot of time, and it's public. So what Groucho Marx chose for himself was to have all of his dirty laundry aired in public. For the whole lawsuit of the guardianship to go by, and then again for everything about what he owned and what he had and where it was going to go to be played out in the public forum of the courtroom and be in the public court records. And I'll tell you, as an experienced attorney, after 35 years, one of the times that I see people fighting the most and hear the stories of the conversations at the funerals is after somebody's gone and when they didn't leave clear direction. Somebody's got the claws out. Families fight and people never talk to each other again. Listen, a lot of what we're talking about today is about our children, your children. And so I want to tell you another story which will illustrate the importance of estate planning for the minors that you love. I am so fortunate to be part of a couple of national groups of very, very competent estate planning lawyers. In one of those groups, there's a lawyer that practices in another state, who I have a very high opinion of. And she shared her mother's story with me. Her mother was a little girl, and it was a bit unusual back in those days, and I don't know the circumstances, but she was being raised by her single mom. She and her sister, her older sister. The mother had an older sister. The two of them were being raised by the mom, and the mom had a nanny to help her. I presume the mother was a working person to support this family. And one day, the mom left. Don't know if she kissed the daughters goodbye. Probably gave the nanny some instructions, went out, and never, ever returned. So think about that situation. There are now two sisters, like 8 and 6 years old. They're home with the nanny, a person hired to take care of them. I've never been clear on exactly what happened to the mom, but she didn't live through it. So once the investigation was underway, the police came to their home. And the first thing, of course, they would have done is dismiss the nanny because she had no legal right to take care of those children. The next things they would do is bring in a State Department to decide where the kids go under the law of that particular state, in our case, Florida. And what happened was those two little girls, because they were different ages, were split up. And they were sent to two different orphanages. Can you imagine that? You've lost your mom. They've taken away the nanny that you relied on. And they've now taken away your big sister. So that little girl, the younger sister, is the one who grew up to be my colleague's mother. My colleague describes her mother as all but a shut-in. She's lived a very quiet and meek life. She makes all of her decisions based on fear and safety, and she is largely unable to function even to this day as a grandmother, right? An older lady. Don't leave that fate to your kids. Let's do a little planning. Let's decide who you would like to take care of your children. Let's put the documentation in place that can help do that. Now, I will tell you there was a slightly silver lining, and that once the law was applied, some family member was able to come in, and those two little girls were able to grow up in the same house of a distant relative, right? But that woman was affected for the rest of her life by her mom's simple choice not to put into place a document about who she would want to care for her kids when they grow up. So how do we take care of our kids? We think our way through our values. We think how they'd like to be raised if suddenly we weren't able to do so ourselves. And we create some documents to put that into effect. And I will tell you, the creation of the documents is not the magic part. The magic part is in the exploration, in the review of the options available, and in the examination of all sorts of different options available in your life. So I told you that one of the things I feel very strongly about in the estate planning practice is holding together the American family. I'm going to tell you one more story. You can tell I like telling stories. And this one is one where I was the attorney involved. Stan was an American. He was an immigrant. He came from another country to this country, basically penniless, his last dollars in his pocket, just before the Second World War. Signed up, served in the U.S. military. He served honorably throughout the Second World War and received an honorable discharge. As a result of that, he was able to take advantage of the GI Bill and get an education. Turned out Stan was a really smart guy. He ended up getting a physics degree from Harvard. Stan is the kind of person we're so glad that come to our country to help us grow to a better country. I got to meet Stan when he was an older guy. Fascinating man, very formal, always called me Mr. Miller. Never called me John. Most of my clients called me by my first name. At this point, he had a successful career in a certainly Fortune 500, maybe 100 corporation that you would know the name of as a physicist, and he'd amassed a decent degree of wealth. Stan was kind of a quirky fellow. He never married. He was a lifelong bachelor. He had a couple of sisters back where he came from. Stan had moved down here, of course, when he became a client. One of those two sisters had a boy. And Stan had a sister. The sister had two daughters. One of those two daughters had a boy, his great nephew. And yep, that little boy was the apple of Stan's eye. Unfortunately, the sister that didn't have children was not a very nice person. I often say when telling this story, if you can imagine from central casting in Hollywood, the good witch and the bad witch, that's basically what Stan's nieces were like. Stan's sister had died, so the only family he had were those two nieces and that great nephew. Now, Stan was a coin collector. It fascinated him. Ancient Rome, ancient Greece, complete collections of American coins, pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, and up. I had the opportunity to see his collection. Now, Stan was passing that collection on to his great nephew. It was something they had in common. Every time they'd visit, he'd bring him another collection. And of course, he'd started with the pennies, working his way up. I had the opportunity to do some work with Stan. And some years later, he came in and said that he wanted to do the ancillary documents to a will, but he was not yet ready to do the will itself. I advised him against that, thinking it to be a very bad idea. But he was strong-willed and intelligent and declined to move forward with the will while only doing the other documents, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Powers of attorney, healthcare surrogates, those sorts of things, right? So he says, Mr. Miller, I'll be back in 3 years to do my will. I just haven't completely decided what to do. I said, sir, I recommend against that, but you are the client, you make the choices. Not 6 months later, I received a call. Now, remember, Stan was Harvard educated, and he spoke impeccably. And I said, nice to hear from you, Stan. How are you? He said, Mr. Miller, I'm dying and I ain't got no will. Now, I happen to be fond of this client, as I am of many of the people we work with. So, taken aback, I said, I'm so sorry to hear that. What? And he said, well, I got attacked by a very aggressive form of cancer, and I have very little time. Will you draw me up a will? And he told me what to do. Obviously, he wanted things to go to that apple of his eye, his great-nephew, through the great-nephew's mother. And he was going to cut out the bad witch. I said, we'll get right on it. Jumped on it, drafted the will, called him back. I believe it was later the same day. I said, Mr. Miller, I'm tired. We're going to have to do this in the morning. I said, okay, just tell me where you are. And he was a good client. So I was going to bring the documents to him with witnesses so that I could notarize the signature. Well, called the next morning and said, okay, where are you? Ready to go? He says, Mr. Miller, they're taking me to hospice this morning, so I really need to put off signing my will. Can you come tomorrow? I said, okay, but we need to get this thing in place now. I've got it ready for you. And they took him to hospice, which was not far from my office. So the next morning, as promised, rather than driving to work, I drove straight to the hospice near Mayo Clinic. And I asked to see him, and I was shown in. And there he was on his bed, and he had been administered morphine for his pain, and he was out cold. I don't know the medical term for it, but the nurse tried very hard to waken him so we could take care of what he wanted to do, and he never woke up. So the will that he had finally decided to put in place to protect that great nephew never got signed. 1 day difference. 1 day of failing to get that thing signed. And the next day it was too late. And I could tell you, he passed shortly thereafter, and I could tell you that everything we knew that was going to happen did. The niece that I've called the bad witch started litigation. It went on for 5 years. Horrible things happened. Those two sisters will never speak again. And ultimately, the mother of the apple of Stan's eye had to buy back the coin collection from her sister that Stan had meant to leave him. It's just such a sad result. I was a younger lawyer then. I try harder now to get people to go ahead and make a decision and sign on the line which is dotted and get their will in place, because we know we can always change it later if they change their mind. But if we don't get it in place, bad things can and regularly do happen. One day. What were you doing one day before the moment you're listening to this? Yesterday at breakfast. What were you doing? That's a day. Doesn't seem like much of a space in time, but we're never guaranteed tomorrow. So we need to act today to make sure to protect those that we love. So his estate had to go through probate. Now, 80% of Americans, 8 out of every 10, leave an estate that has to go through probate, either with or without a will. In probate, there is significant shrinkage of the estate for various reasons. I've told you some of the things about probate. I'm going to hit on it again before we finish this hour. Our goal is to strengthen your family tree. Therefore, in every case appropriate, we want to help the family avoid probate so that the fighting doesn't start, and so that the maximum amount of what you've worked for goes to your family. We tell you about an estate that had a single asset. It just happened to be a valuable piece of real property. Only that one piece of property had to pass through estate, through the probate. Only that one piece of property had to pass through probate. Yet the fee for doing that, discounted by the lawyer who was hired to do it, was $105,000. And under the statute, it would have been 3 times that. It could reasonably have been awarded as 3 times that by the court. A few $1,000s now, or hundreds of thousands of dollars later. Now, we just had a case. Thankfully, their plan's in place. But had we not done that, their probate could have cost up to $300,000 $300,000 under the statutes. Let's avoid that and put that money in the pockets of whomever you love. So estate planning is what? It's about keeping all or as much as possible of what you have earned for who or what you want it to go to. For those of you that have done nothing, and I've found every time I teach this course, that's the majority of the room, your first problem is that nothing has been done to alleviate any of the excessive cost of probate. That's step one. That's easy to do. Now, beyond step one, what's your biggest expense? Usually people say housing, food, something like that. Before I answer that, how much of your retirement savings is actually yours? Every time I do this in a live room, somebody says, all of it. Think so? Do you think so? Try taking some of it out. You're on to me. Your biggest expense is your taxes. And you've got a partner in your retirement. And that's the Internal Revenue Service. Our job is to make sure to use the laws that are available to us for you to make sure that everything is done to keep the most of that amount for you and your heirs. Did you know that the national debt and the amount in retirement funds happen to be about the same? Yep. There's some folks in DC that are looking to tax those funds to try to pay down our national debt. Count on it. I don't believe taxes are going to go down again in our lifetime. Now listen, retirement plans, as you know, grow tax-free. Most of them are taxed when they come out. There are alternatives to that. But retirement plans are not generational transfer devices, meaning they don't go to your heirs tax-free. At this moment, in America, only about 5% of retirement plans are not taxable. We believe whatever happens in the election that's coming up, there is going to be a tax increase next year. In fact, some of you may have heard of the Secure Act, which is in respect to inheriting qualified retirement funds, and what is called the stretch has been taken away. Heirs are required to inherit that money on a more quickly timetable, and they're going to be taxed on it. So we see it already in effect. Those taxes are increasing. Listen, in our country and every country, there are effectively two tax codes in effect. This is especially in regard to your qualified or retirement plans. Two tax codes in effect. One for the informed, who pay no or less taxes, and another for the uninformed, who blindly pay taxes they might otherwise not have to have paid. Become informed. For instance, would it be important to you to make your retirement income tax-free? Example, did you know that the IRS will give you a tax deduction today for a charitable deduction you don't make until after you and your spouse pass away? It's out there. It may or may not be for you, but don't you think you ought to be informed about that when you make the decisions on the future of your family? Some of the voluntary taxes that people pay, state tax, capital gains tax, probate, all voluntary. Choices can be made to avoid them. All things considered, the shrinkage of an estate for a couple is statistically 30 to 60%, and it happens 80% of the time. Wouldn't you like to be part of the 20% who don't experience shrinkage of their estate? Other things estate planning can do. Some estate planning has to do with asset protection, protecting you and those you love against lawsuits, liens, judgments, and we like to joke, your future son-in-law. It's actually very important to make sure and protect your heirs from bad decisions they might make in the future. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with bad intent. I'm advised by someone that's in my network that I work with of a scenario where a couple was married for a long time, right? And one of the spouses passed away. They had done their estate planning even. But the spouse who lived happened to be the husband. After a time, remarried a delightful person. But the couple that we began talking about had a special needs child. And the woman that he later married had a daughter. And the daughter was divorced from a rock star. She got a real nice settlement, right? So unfortunately, after the wife died, the husband remarried, and then he died. And guess who inherited everything from him? Not his special needs son, his then wife. And when she died, guess who inherited? Not the special needs son. The rich lady who had received the huge divorce settlement from the rock star. Right? All of this can be avoided. It is so important that you fight for your family. So important that you fight for the future of your own life and that of your children. Why is it important? Those nagging statistics I keep talking about, they also show that American families go from rags to riches to rags, typically in 3 generations. So it's likely that if you have managed to accumulate some abundance, that the next generation is going to lose it. But you can set it up so that fate doesn't befall them, right? You heard that before? Rags to riches to rags, 3 generations. That means if you build it, the likelihood is the next generation is going to tear it down. But we can build safety nets for them. And that is what estate planning is all about. If it's important to you to preserve what you've earned and to pass it on to whomever you choose, and you have not yet done estate planning, now's the time. I assume that the pandemic has caused a lot of people to start thinking that maybe they should get busy with their estate plan, and maybe that's what's bringing you to this session. There are an array of tools, devices, and methodologies to accomplish each person's different needs, wants, desires, and values. We're not going to talk about the specifics today. That's really not all that interesting, except when applied to your personal situation. Listen, when you make important, life-changing choices, those that we make at the crossroads, do you like to be well-informed or ill-informed? Well-informed, right? You know, I read a great quote recently that said that our lives are a result of choices we make at the crossroads. I tell you, deciding whether to do estate planning is a crossroads moment in your life. It's always a problem to take advice from people with something to sell. And that is why a major part of our exploration with you, our discovery journey with you, is to determine what your values are and what is important. We will do an evaluation based on your values and what you own to determine objectively what opportunities are available to you. And the majority of those opportunities are not things we are even engaged in supplying, right? I have a paranoia myself. I don't know the insurance industry, for instance, extremely well. Am I making the very best decisions for my heirs with the insurance that I'm carrying? I don't know, because the person who sold it to me, of course, they say it is. Here's an opportunity for you to have some objectivity in the planning for your future. We review your total picture, not just your estate plan. I've already told you some of the things we can do for you, but to see what other people can do for you. And then you choose whether to go forward with that other provider or not. But how can you know what your choices are if you don't have an evaluation? So, if you don't have an estate plan, or if your estate plan is very old and outdated, this is a serious but solvable situation. We do our very best to assist you through this process and to make it as enjoyable as possible and a learning experience as well as a discovery journey for you. I know you tuned in wanting some nuts and bolts on estate planning. I can talk about that. I think it's one of the most least interesting things in this subject. But I feel like to give value for these sessions in exchange for your hour of time, I really should talk about it. Listen, the building block of every estate plan is last will and testament, right? The will. If you have only a will, it may be the appropriate device for you, but it's also going to put you, your estate, and your heirs through probate. And pardon my French, but probate sucks. Yep, it really sucks. What does it suck? It sucks away wealth. It sucks in snoops and fake creditors. It sucks that it's public record, probably forever. It's probably going to benefit some lawyer you don't even know. And as an attorney, I assist families through probate who we've not been able to help with the planning process, but I am much more comfortable putting their plans in place and helping them than being paid by the heirs to do something that they should have avoided. I alluded to it earlier in the story about Stan, but probate is the place where families fight. I have seen families that will never, ever communicate again. And it's sad for me. I don't want to leave that for my kids. I'd like to think they wouldn't be that, but so does everybody else. Everybody else. So one way I define probate is a voluntary tax you impose on yourself. You impose a diminution of the value of your estate. You make time before your heirs can get what they need to get to carry on life. You cause emotional distress to those you love most, including having to relive your death day after day after day when they have to go down to court rather than doing that which they would like to do in their life. It also takes away from your legacy. You're remembered for leaving them in that situation. So many reasons to get on with this. Now listen, that was a will, right? Where everybody gets to know all your dirty laundry and everything that you own. But riddle me this. How much was Rosa Parks worth when she died? You don't know. I don't know either. You want to know why? We're never going to know, because she had a trust. And it was all confidential. And it is all confidential. This national team of experts that I've been invited into, one of the lawyers actually handled Rosa Parks' trust. I'm very proud to be part of that group. And this can be done for you too. It's not just for the rich and famous. It's not just for those that have changed the world. You can change your world and the future of your family tree. Along with a will and trust, we'll take care of you by providing such things as a power of attorney. That's so somebody can take care of your business needs. A healthcare surrogate, so if somebody can interact with your healthcare providers. And there's another document, a HIPAA release so they can see your records. There's another document that most folks call a living will, which I think is a horrible name because it's so confusing with the last will and testament. But we have renamed it a directive to physician. I like to call it your ticket to ride. A living will is simply how you will be treated during your last illness. And there's some other documents that we're going to include, specifically including pre-need guardianship documents for those of you with minor children, organ donor directive, if that is part of your plan. And of course, each plan is a little bit different. So we would craft the documents that you need. So thank you. Thank you for making a big time commitment to spend this time. I'll even thank those of you that are watching it on the video replay. Congratulations. So listen, like I said, what you value is up to you. I can't make you care about anything. But my experience tells me that you care about something. Whatever thing that is that you care about, I can help. And I'd like to help. And I talked about this being the second best hour that you'll spend this year. I'd like for the best hour, and my goal is for the best hour to be an hour you spend in my office on a journey of discovery, reviewing what options are available for you in your life. In order to do that, just call my office, 904-241-1113, or email any of us. You can contact us through the website, rocksolidlaw.com, and schedule an appointment for a discovery meeting. So you get fully informed about some of the most important crossroad decisions of your life. Your future hinges on it. The future of your children hinge on it. The future generations of your family hinge on it. As a special offer for attending this time, for any of you that have young adult children, in your package that you have us create for you, we will include at no additional charge powers of attorney for your young adults. You know, once they turn 18, you no longer have the rights you had one day before to take care of them. That power of attorney can fix that. Also, for those of you with younger children, we're absolutely going to include a pre-need guardian document so that you pick who's going to be in charge of your kids, just in case there comes a day when you can't do so. In order to take advantage of that, oh, my dear Shelley gave me a great code. That code is back to school. Your code is back to school to receive a 1-hour discovery session without charge, and for your package to include either powers of attorney for your young adults or designation of guardians for your minors. Really appreciate you guys joining me today. I don't see any questions having popped up in the chat line, so I'm not going to keep you any longer than I need to. We are going to go back to our regular weekly Zoominars, which last 20 to 30 minutes typically. This week we decided to give the full estate planning workshop. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm John Miller, founding attorney, Rock Solid Law.